It started on a Tuesday. I was rinsing grapes in the tiny kitchen of my apartment in Mendoza when the video came through. No subject line, just a Google Drive link from a name I hadn't seen in almost 2 decades, Ms. Winter. I almost didn't open it, thought maybe it was spam, but my thumb hovered. Ms. Winter had been the ballet teacher who lived next door when I was a teenager. She used to bring me lemon candies during my parents' fights. I tapped the link. The video loaded slowly, a bit grainy at first, and then it hit me. A luxury hotel ballroom, gold trim, velvet drapes, rows of white chairs, soft piano music playing in the background. At the front, a white casket surrounded by lilies, and on the easel above it, a photo of me, smiling, framed, dead. I blinked. My knees buckled slightly, and I gripped the counter. At the podium stood my father in a perfectly pressed suit, reading from a script. Struggled with loneliness most of her life, he said, but we choose today not to remember the darkness, but the light she once brought. The camera panned. There was my mother, wearing black silk, dark sunglasses, dabbing her eyes like she was born to grieve. I forgot to breathe. This wasn't a prank. They were holding a memorial service. For me. I was alive, standing there in my own apartment in Argentina, watching my funeral unfold in real time. I pressed pause. My heart was racing, palms clammy. For a moment I thought maybe it was symbolic. Maybe they were doing some bizarre performance art grieving the daughter they pushed away. But no. I rewound it. There were dates. Celine Marie Voss, my father read. Born March 8, 1988. Passed July 10, 2021. That wasn't symbolism. That was a declaration. My parents had publicly buried me. A woman still very much breathing. I hit play again. The camera wobbled, panned around the room. People I hadn't seen in years. My childhood riding coach. Family friends from Connecticut. Cousins I barely recognized. All dressed in black. All watching the casket like it held something holy. I stared at the image of myself on the easel. The photo was one I hadn't seen in years. It was from my college graduation. I had sent it to my mother, hoping she'd come around. She never responded, and yet here it was, framed and surrounded by lilies. The irony made my stomach lurch. As the piano music swelled, my mother took the stage. She was sensitive, she said, voice wavering. She never recovered from the pain of what happened overseas. It broke her. My ears rang. Overseas? I hadn't been back to the States since 2017. I had nothing to do with any of this. And yet here she was, spinning a narrative, sealing it in tears and designer sunglasses. I paused the video. It wasn't grief. It was a performance. And I needed to know who wrote the script. I stared at the paused image on my screen. My parents frozen in solemn expression, a casket with no body, and a picture of me that said, "You don't exist." Except I did. And they were about to wish I didn't. I watched the video 3 more times, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I needed to hear every word, catch every glance, memorize every lie. The 3rd time through, I kept the volume low. My father's voice was steady, almost mechanical. She was always different, he said, carefully avoiding the word difficult. Sensitive, private. She never found her place. And then came the line that stopped me cold. She battled isolation. She never recovered from her downward spiral. But we loved her, we did. Downward spiral. I paused it right there. My reflection in the darkened screen stared back at me, my hair tied up, my apron stained with grape pulp. Alive, sane, and nothing like the ghost they were burying. They weren't just mourning me, they were rewriting me. I walked out onto the balcony and lit a cigarette. Something I hadn't done in years. The sun was setting over the vineyards. Rows of vines stretching into the hills, quiet and patient. They didn't care who I used to be. They only cared that I showed up and did the work. That was what I loved about life here. It didn't ask questions, but now the past was clawing its way back. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 9 years, not since the day they sat me down and said, in their careful, measured way, that they could no longer have me in their lives. I was 27. Kendra, my younger sister, had just been caught selling breeding rights to a stallion she didn't own. A stallion worth nearly $500,000. Papers were forged, witnesses manipulated. But when the heat came down, it was me they blamed. I was the moody one. The black sheep, the convenient target. It's cleaner this way, my mother had said, pouring herself another glass of wine. Better one failed daughter than two. My father didn't say a word, just stood behind her with his hands folded like a doorman. I left that night with 2 suitcases and a ticket to Buenos Aires. I thought they'd call. They didn't. I thought maybe they'd send an email. Nothing. I wrote once. A long letter. I apologized for what I hadn't done. I begged them to ask Kendra the right questions. I never got a response. Over the next few years, I tried to find my footing. First as a waitress, then as an intern at a vineyard in the Uco Valley. I worked long days, learned Spanish, lived in staff housing with paper-thin walls and one shared bathroom. It was the first time in my life I ever felt real. But I still tried to reach out. I sent postcards, holiday messages, birthdays. Once I emailed my old riding coach, a woman who used to call me champ every time I won a ribbon. She replied with a 1-line email. I'm sorry, but I can't get involved. It took me too long to understand what that meant. My erasure wasn't just personal, it was coordinated. I didn't just lose my family, I lost my entire ecosystem. The people who once sent me graduation cards, the cousins who used to beg me for rides on the ponies, my aunt who gave me makeup tips before prom. Every door I knocked on stayed shut. And now I knew why. They hadn't just disowned me, they made me disappear. The next morning, I skipped work, called in sick. I couldn't look at grapes or fermentation logs or listen to Mauricio talk about tannins. Not while my face was sitting on a fake obituary halfway across the world. I pulled out my laptop and logged into a VPN. My fingers trembled as I typed into the search bar. Celine Marie Voss obituary. There it was. Top result, dated 2 years ago. Beloved daughter and sister, taken too soon while traveling abroad. I clicked on it. It was published in a small paper in Maine, where my parents kept a vacation property. Apparently, I had drowned on a private boat tour near Santorini. The write-up was short and vague, full of phrases like adventurous soul and a quiet strength. It mentioned no cause of death beyond accidental drowning, no autopsy, no investigation, just gone. There was a photo of me, the same one from the fake memorial. The one I'd sent them years ago when I thought maybe we still had a chance. I sat back in my chair, cold creeping into my spine. They had killed me, not figuratively, legally. I opened a new tab and logged into the U.S. State Department portal. I tried to renew my passport just to see. After a few seconds, a red error banner popped up. Applicant status, deceased. Record not eligible for renewal. That's when I started shaking. I searched my name in government death records. There it was, black and white. Name, Celine Marie Voss. Date of death, July 10th, 2021. Location, Aegean Sea, near Santorini. Cause, drowning. No foul play suspected disposition. Cremated. They covered all the angles. I pulled out a folder from my bottom drawer and laid everything out across my kitchen table. Lease agreements in Argentina, tax records from the vineyard, my original passport, bank statements, signed work contracts, travel logs, all with dates, stamps, and signatures that proved I was alive and very much on land during that time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up the phone and dialed my Aunt Millie. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Hello? Aunt Millie, it's Celine. Silence. Then a shaky breath. Who? It's me, Celine. I saw the video. A pause. Then, I don't think this is funny. I'm not joking. I'm alive. I've been alive. Click. The line went dead. I tried calling her again. Straight to voicemail. I tried 3 of my cousins. 2 didn't answer. The 3rd, Jillian, blocked me before I could even finish the first sentence. Only one person replied. Nico, my youngest cousin, 20 years old now, a freshman at Columbia. I messaged him on Instagram with a photo of the obituary. He wrote back, "That's the photo they used. I thought it was weird too. They said you drowned, riptide. You were cremated immediately. Mom said it was too painful to talk about." I typed back. I wasn't even in Greece. He left the chat open for a long time, then finally wrote, "Wait, are you really Celine?" I sent him a photo, holding up a sign with his name and the date. 10 minutes later, he messaged, "Holy shit, everyone thinks you've been dead for years." So there it was. Not only had my family banished me, they'd buried me, lied to the government, lied to the world, and convinced everyone I had died so they could pretend I never existed. I found the wedding page on a whim. I don't even remember what I typed. Probably something like Kendra Voss Wedding, or maybe just her name. There it was, a custom website with blush-toned fonts and autoplay violin music, registered under her fiancé's last name. Welcome to the union of Kendra Voss and Nolan Whitmore. Establishment October 22nd. Four Seasons Resort, Palm Beach. I scrolled slowly, not sure what I was looking for. The About page showed Kendra beaming in white, beside a man who looked like a stock photo husband. Underneath was a quote, "To the one daughter who never let us down. Charles Voss, father of the bride." I froze. I clicked on the photo beside it. A toast being given at the reception. My father, tuxedoed, hand raised. Kendra standing next to him with that smile she perfected at pony shows. Behind them, the ocean, rows of guests. My mother seated front row, smiling through what I now realized was pure fiction. I studied every detail. No seat saved for a sister. No mention of me anywhere on the site. Not in the family section, not in the registry, not in the acknowledgments. It was like I had never been born. That phrase echoed in my head. The one daughter who never let us down. They had already rewritten the story, and I was the blank space they'd edited out. My hands trembled as I logged into my old US bank account. I hadn't touched it much since moving to Argentina, but I still kept it open for emergencies. What I found made my stomach drop. The trust fund, my trust fund, the one my grandfather set up before he died, was gone. Not just drained, transferred. The last transaction was dated 6 months after the fake death certificate. Transfer to beneficiary, K. Voss. Status, approved. I stared at the screen, numb. That account had been locked until I turned 35. It was supposed to be untouchable unless I signed off, or unless I died. My mouth went dry. I dug deeper. Requested old statements, reviewed trustee communications. The paperwork said the funds were released due to death of primary beneficiary. Attached was a scanned copy of my death certificate. They didn't just fake my death to forget me. They faked it to replace me. I had been erased with intention, scrubbed from the family tree so Kendra could inherit the fruits of a life she never earned. The horses, the land, the money, the image, all of it repackaged under one daughter's name. Not a scandal, not a loss, just a trade. And I wasn't grieving anymore. I was preparing. I walked into the law office just before noon, clutching a folder so tightly my knuckles hurt. It wasn't the first time I'd tried to tell someone the truth, but it was the first time I'd brought the receipts. The receptionist looked up from her desk, blinking behind cat-eye glasses. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm here to speak with someone about a death certificate," I said. "Yours?" I set the folder on the counter. "Yes, mine." 10 minutes later, I was seated across from a junior attorney named Mateo Estrada. Mid-30s, kind face, blazer too big at the shoulders. He started the meeting politely, half expecting some paperwork error. Then I opened the folder. "Here's my passport," I said. "Stamped at Buenos Aires 3 days before the date listed on the death certificate." He nodded, flipping through. "This is my work contract at the vineyard, signed in person a week later." More nodding. Faster now. My lease in Mendoza, my tax ID registration, even a speeding ticket from last year. And here, I slid over the last sheet, is the death certificate they used to take my inheritance. He stared at it for a long time, then slowly looked up. "You're Celine Voss." I never stopped being. He leaned back in his chair, letting out a long breath. "This is insane." I nodded. "And provable." He closed the folder gently and folded his hands. "You realize this is fraud. Federal, possibly criminal, and you're going to need more than me." "I don't need someone famous," I said. "I need someone who believes me." He studied me for a long time, then extended his hand. "Okay, let's bring you back from the dead." That night, I booked a flight, It was impulsive, reckless maybe, but I couldn't wait for courts to crawl through red tape. While my parents hosted brunches in my memory, I needed them to see me. I was packing when the message came. No sender, just a blocked number, one line. They're holding a second memorial this Sunday. Bigger. Final, I sat down slowly, my suitcase half zipped. Bigger. Final. I didn't even know what that meant. A legacy fundraiser? A scholarship? Maybe just another performance, meant to seal my coffin with applause this time. But whatever it was happening in 4 days. And I was done watching from the sidelines. I wasn't flying home as a daughter. I was flying in as a reckoning. The ballroom was a mirror of the first video, only grander. Chandeliers glistened above rows of ivory chairs. White roses curled out of crystal vases. A string quartet played something slow and haunting. Everything was curated, expensive, dramatic. Exactly how my mother liked grief to look. I stood in the lobby, hidden behind a marble column, watching them through the glass-paneled doors. People were still arriving, shaking off rain from their coats, whispering solemn greetings. I recognized most of them, the same old family friends, the same carefully selected circle of mourners. A huge blown-up photo of me stood near the altar, that same college graduation picture. Smile a little too wide, eyes a little too hopeful. In front of it, a sleek white casket, closed. Of course it was closed. I adjusted my blazer. Nothing flashy. Black trousers, simple heels, no jewelry. I wanted to look sharp. I wanted them to see my face and know, this isn't a ghost. This is consequence. Inside, the lights dimmed. Someone tapped a champagne glass. I moved closer to the doors. Kendra took the podium first. She wore black lace like it was runway couture. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like the star of a movie that wasn't hers to headline. "Thank you all for being here today," she said, voice soft and controlled. It's hard to put into words what Selena meant to me. I tilted my head. She paused. Looked down at her notes, a practiced tremble. She was brilliant, she continued, but she was also troubled. And as her sister, I saw her struggle. I saw the walls she built, the distance. But I never stopped loving her. I felt my jaw tighten. She kept going. She left behind so much potential, so many dreams half-lived. But she also left behind a legacy, one we can honor. Today, we've announced the launch of the Celine Voss Foundation. For young women in equestrian programs across the country, there it was. The second memorial, the final seal. They weren't just mourning me, they were repackaging me, marketing me. Applause rippled through the crowd. Kendra bowed her head. My mother dabbed her eyes, perfectly timed. I watched until the room fell silent for the moment of reflection. Then I pushed open the doors. The click of my heels echoed through the marble like gunshots. Heads turned, gasps, whispers. One woman dropped her purse. A wine glass shattered near the back. Kendra froze mid-step. My father stood up so quickly his chair tipped over. And my mother, my perfectly poised, black-veiled mother, fainted. Just dropped. Like someone had unplugged her. I walked straight down the aisle, past stunned faces and trembling hands. Someone began filming. I welcomed it. I stopped directly beneath my own photo, and for a long moment I said nothing, just looked at them. Kendra, pale. My father, speechless. And behind them, the lie they built, silk-covered, flower-wrapped, and empty. "Hello," I said finally, my voice calm and clear. "I heard I died, but I have a few corrections to make." Silence, a cough near the back. I held up my passport, then a folder, then I smiled, not kindly, just enough to show teeth. Let the resurrection begin. I stood beneath a 10-foot portrait of my own smiling face, the one they'd printed like a movie poster, like I was a tragic heroine instead of the inconvenient truth they tried to bury. For a second, no one moved. Then the whispers began. "She's alive. Is that really her? Didn't she die in Greece?" I cleared my throat. Let me save everyone a little confusion. I opened the folder in my hands and held up a document. This is my passport, stamped in Argentina 4 days before my so-called death in the Aegean Sea. Gasps. This, I said, lifting another sheet, is my employment contract. I've been working in Mendoza since 2018. This is my lease agreement. These, I flipped to the next, are my travel records, tax returns, and bank statements, all showing I was alive and very much on dry land when the Voss family claimed otherwise. A phone camera lifted, then another. I could see it happening in real time, people capturing it, streaming it, the illusion cracking like glass beneath a stiletto. My father stepped forward, face pale. "Celine?" "No," I said, louder now. "You don't get to speak first. You had your monologue already. I watched you give it in a hotel ballroom filled with liars." Someone behind him murmured, "Oh my God." I turned slightly, locking eyes with the crowd. 2 years ago, my parents filed a death certificate stating I drowned in Greece. They held a private service, told everyone I was cremated. Why? Because it was easier than admitting the truth. My voice steadied. I looked directly at my sister. I was disowned to cover up a crime Kendra committed, fraud, forgery, and when I tried to speak up, they banished me. And when that wasn't enough, they killed me, on paper. Kendra shook her head, lips trembling. "You don't understand." "No, I understand perfectly," I snapped. "I was inconvenient. So you got rid of me, and then you helped yourself to my life." I pulled out the last page, held it in both hands. This is the record of my trust fund, transferred to Kendra 6 months after my death. It was supposed to be locked until I turned 35. More murmurs. Someone gasped audibly. I saw my cousin Nico, phone in hand, filming every word. "I was erased," I said, voice cracking, so she could step into my place, my money, my legacy, my life. A woman in the third row burst into tears. I looked at my mother, still slumped in her seat, eyes open now, hollow. Then at my father, whose hands were trembling. "I didn't die," I said. "You gave me up. You buried me so no one would ask questions. But I crawled out. And now everyone gets to watch." The room was chaos now. People standing, phones flashing. Someone was crying in the back. Kendra looked like she might faint herself. I closed the folder gently and stepped away from the casket. Empty, like the story they told. "No more silence," I said, looking each of them in the eye. "No more pretending I don't exist." I turned and walked out without another word. The last thing I heard behind me was someone shouting my name, but I didn't look back. Not this time. The paperwork was thick, stapled packets, notarized affidavits, signed declarations. I sat beside Mateo in a courtroom that smelled like stale air and old wood, waiting for the judge to call my case. When they finally did, I stood tall. Name, Celine Marie Voss. Petition, reversal of wrongful death certification. Grounds, fraudulent declaration. Evidence submitted. The judge flipped through the documents in silence, his brow twitching slightly when he saw the original death certificate. "This was filed 2 years ago," he said without looking up. "With no autopsy, no official report from Greek authorities, no embassy contact, no investigation," Mateo added smoothly, "because there was no body." "And you've been living in Argentina this entire time?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I never died, but someone needed me to." He nodded once and set the papers aside. "Death certificate revoked, effective immediately. An investigation will be referred to the appropriate agencies." And just like that, I was legally alive again. Outside, the sun hit my face like something brand new. Mateo shook my hand, grinning. "You're officially the only client I've had who's come back from the dead." We both laughed, but it was short-lived. Within a week, subpoenas were filed. The financial forensics team combed through the trust transfer. My family's lawyer tried to stall, claimed it was a misunderstanding, but the paper trail said otherwise. Emails, account authorizations, digital signatures, fraud, coordinated and deliberate. My parents were called in for questioning. Kendra's assets were frozen. A probate judge issued a preliminary injunction on any funds tied to my estate. I walked past all 3 of them in court one afternoon. None of them looked at me. I didn't slow down. They had buried me to protect a lie. Now I was walking through the front door of their world and pulling it apart brick by brick. No more ghost. No more silence. I was real again, and they were finally going to feel what that meant. I never asked for revenge. I asked for my life back. And this time, I was keeping it.